All right, guys, welcome to CTIS-22 Digital Forensics. This is an intro course. I'll be honest, this is my first time teaching the course. I am your professor. My name is Aladame. It is a pleasure to meet you. I know you cannot reply to me in real time, and that's all right. You can call me Professor Al, Mr. Al, Professor A, Professor Alame, whatever you want to call me. I'm pretty flexible. Sorry, got some popcorn, so I have some kernels stuck in my teeth here and there, but that will not deter me from teaching you this course. And I'm covering chapter 1 right now, which is an optional lecture. This is essentially the intro, an overview of the course. I'll mark it as optional, don't worry. So let's get into it. And I am using the publisher slides. I will be reading off the slides, but I will elaborate. So here's what's going to be covered in this lecture. It's about 78 slides. I will do my best to cover everything. I might break this up into 2 parts. I'm pretty infamous, I would say, but used to rather breaking up lectures to 2 parts for you guys. Whenever you feel like taking a break, pause the recording. Don't worry, it's only Monday for me when I'm recording this. I'm still working on creating your workflow for the week in terms of what labs you'll be doing. They'll probably be out of the book because let's face it, we're not meeting physically, right? So I can't give you a flash drive to, hey, scan this or look this up, you know what I mean? So I'll think of something. Anyways, here are the objectives. So we're going to describe the fields of digital forensics. So what makes up digital forensics, nuts and bolts, and all that jazz. Explain how to prepare computer investigations, summarize the differences between public sector and private sector. I'll be honest with you, the difference between public and private, I can tell you right now, is public, you work for the government, local government, a federal entity, that kind of thing. Private is pretty much private, corporations, Walmart, Google, Microsoft, uh, Chevrolet. I'm going into car manufacturers, things like that. That is a private sector corporation. Anyways, explain the importance of maintaining professional conduct. Yes, you got to be professional at all times when dealing with stuff like this because it can be sensitive material, especially within law enforcement or government. Well, anywhere really. You're always dealing with sensitive data when you're dealing with stuff like this. Data, they're interchangeable, however you want to call them. Describe how to prepare a digital forensic investigation by taking some systematic approach. Sorry. Yes, there are steps and guides and things you follow, checklists. It's all really how it goes when it comes to doing a digital forensic investigation. Describe procedures for private sector. Sorry, it's floating over me. For private sector digital investigations. That's going to be covered in this. Explain requirements for data recovery, workstations, and software. That's specialized software. There is free stuff out there. You probably heard of like Recover is a big popular one that I've seen a lot. There's a couple other I can't think off the top of my head because the Recover is just the first thing that comes into my head when I think of it. There were a couple tools with the Cronus, I remember. I don't know if they're still around in terms of data recovery for that kind of thing. There used to be something that's called a platter machine. It's ancient. If you know what a mechanical hard drive is, there's spinning disks in it. And what the platter machine is you would take the platters out, which are like spinning disks, which I don't have an open hard drive on me to show you. You would put all 12 or 7 disks and they would all be read at the same time and you would get data back. That's one way of doing it. Now the world's moved on to, the cloud, which I won't cover too much in here, but, micro SD cards, USB drives, SSDs, and all that stuff. And recovering data from those kinds of things can get very dicey because everything's flash based. But we'll get there when we get there. I'm just prefacing with what's going to be in there. Where was it? We did data recovery, and then you summarize how to conduct an investigation, including critiquing a case. Yeah, that's all part of the overview and in here. So let's move on. So, what is digital forensics? What does it mean? What do you mean? What forensics is? That's physical, right? With no forensics and physical, you think of it like fingerprints. Everybody has a fingerprint, right? Hopefully, unless you burn them off, you want to rob a bank. We're not getting into that as a joke. They get around a lot of these kinds of things. So we know forensics has to do with physical evidence and gathering. So what would digital imply? Technology, correct? So this is the study of recovering digital fingerprints, if you want to call it the way, or digital information that may have been destroyed, altered, or changed. So the application of computer science and investigating procedures. So you're combining both computer science, which is, nerds, us, I'm a nerd, I proudly say that. Investigating procedures. God, there's so much floating stuff in my face today. Investigation procedures. So, like being a private eye or stuff along those lines. You combine that with computer science for a legal purpose involving the digital evidence after proper search, authority, as in police, investigations, FBI, DEA, CIA. I'm going to name a bunch of like government entities for this kind of stuff because that's what I'm used to like talking about more. Chain of custody, all part of it. Validation with mathematics, that is actually what your computer would do. It would verify things for you from scanning and doing things. Sorry, just junking, scanning and having it recover items that were deleted or misplaced or what have you. Use validate tools, again, part of the computer part. Repeatability, how often can you copy these things over in that format? Reporting, so you generate after you do all this, you're going to generate a report. Here's what I found, here's what it is, here's what it covers, check off the boxes, fill out what it is, and go from there. And possible expert presentation. So that's where you would go and say, hey, here's what I found, either in a meeting, in a court case, or what have you. So October 2012, over 10 years ago now, time flies, right? ISO standard for digital forensics ratified, ISO 27037, information technology security techniques. ISO is I believe it's a standard operating procedure. Give me 2 seconds and I will tell you what that means. Not on there. Don't worry about that. That's not the slide I wanted. That was my personal Facebook. Let me close it. Tab, because you need to figure out what ISO is. Let me pull that up right now. Tell you what ISO is. Yes, I go off the tangent a little bit. International Organization for Standards. Hey, the more you know. So that's what it means. So yes, it's essentially a standard operating procedure in that capacity. So it's something that they have to use, that they will use going forward. That's why it's there. These are the steps you follow. These are the steps you take. So here's a bit of a history lesson on the next page. The Federal Rules of Evidence, FRE, was created to ensure consistency in federal proceedings. Signed into law in 1973. Many states' rules map to the FRE. California has it, maps to the FRE. Connecticut would have it, maps to the FRE. The FBI created their Computer Analyst and Response Team, CART, was formed in 1984. If you ever look at it, the history of computer hacking, there's an interesting case that involves the US, the CIA, hacking into Russia and messing with gas pipelines. Look it up. It's just something really cool and really interesting. This will give you kind of an idea of how all this can kind of tie together. So by the late 1990s, rather, the CART team teamed up with the Department of Defense, DoD, Computer Forensics Laboratory, the DCFL. So they both partnered up and they became a bigger operational unit to discover more. So we have what's something called the Fourth Amendment in our Bill of Rights. So the U.S. Constitution protects everyone's rights to be secure from search and seizure. So in order for them, let's say, you get in trouble with the law, what have you, they need to scan your computer and they take it away for a day, they have to have a search warrant. They can't just barge into your house and take it without a search warrant. Plain and simple. So someone has to rubber stamp it up, in the courthouse saying they approve the search and they grab it. Every U.S. jurisdiction has case law related to the admissibility of evidence recovered from computers and or digital devices. That's true. And every county, every state, they have laws for this kind of stuff. It can get kind of dry. This stuff does get a little bit dry, guys. I am warning you. So, like I said, take a break, drink some water. I will be here when you get back. I'm sure you're going to pause it. I'm not going anywhere. So, moving on. So, digital forensics and other related disciplines. This is part 1 of 3 for this. This is only slide 6, guys. I got about 72 slides to go. Investigating digital devices includes collecting data securely. So, how do you collect data from a device? We're going to cover that. Examining suspect data to determine these, which is origin and content. So, other than looking like at the property file of a property item, where was it made, who created it, what time and date, you can find out more. We use specific tools, which we will get to. Presenting digital information to courts. This is what I talked about, where you go up there and present your findings. That's what that is. Applying laws to digital device practices. That's a pretty curious one. You gotta be pretty brushed up with law when you do this kind of work. A lot of policing organizations hire digital forensics specialists, and they have to know both how to walk the tightrope of the law and how to do the job. So, what's legal versus what's illegal and how to do it properly versus how to not do it properly. That's what I'm referring to about the tightrope. So digital forensics is different from data recovery. Sounds similar, but in the sense of they both involve data, true. Data recovery, personal stuff. Digital forensics, who recreating stuff from broken hard drives, cracked up flash drives, CDs that have been smashed into a billion pieces. It's still legible. Yes, I know what a CD is. I hope you do too. But that's just an example, which involves, so here's the difference, which involves retrieving information that was deleted by mistake or lost during a power surge or server crash. Forensics investigators often work as part of a team known as the investigation triad, which is covered in the next slide. So this is the investigation triad. It involves vulnerability, threat assessment, and risk management, which also involves network intrusion detection and incident response, followed by digital investigation. So they all go hand in hand. Someone breaks into the network, there's got to be someone to respond to it, right? That involves a digital investigation. Well, then once that's done, well, let's look at the vulnerabilities in the network. Let's see what threats were there in the network. Let's see what risks you have that are non-negotiable. Because let's face it, you can never get rid of risk 100%. That's what that means. So they all just go hand in hand. Sorry, I had dinner. So let's move to the next slide. So availability, threat, and risk management. Test and verifies integrity with standalone, I guess, workstations and network servers. Yes, you run that. There's a security team. Yes, hire them. Penetration testing, all that kind of jazz. Network intrusion detection and incident response. Detects intrusion attacks by using automated tools and monitoring network firewall logs. So essentially, you have a firewall in place at work, I hope, or at home, maybe some people do. And how you've configured it, it'll respond to people trying to access something called a port that you guys are covering or covered in the first week. And that's why I had you guys deal with networking stuff, so you understand what I'm talking about here. And it will respond, it'll close the port, kick them off, do whatever have you generate a port and logs, yada, yada, yada. That's what that takes care of. Digital investigations manages investigations and conducts forensic analysis of systems suspected of containing evidence. So let's say there was a breach, right? And you're in charge of this. Let's say you're in charge of this at work. Let's put that out there. Don't worry about where you work. Just let's say you're in charge of it. 3 computers are brought to you saying, hey, we believe there was a foreign actor. Can you hook these up and check them one by one? That's where your digital investigation is. You just fill your forms, you fill them out, you write them down. Hey, I found computer 1 has good. Computer 2 was a little sketchy, looked at me weird. Computer 3 was really bad. They did a lot of damage. Here's what I was able to find out. Here's how they accessed it. Yada yada yada. That's what be involved with the digital investigation and showing your findings, etc., etc., etc. So here's more of a little bit of history of digital forensics. Early 1990s, the International Association of Computer Investigation, specialists, IACIS, introduced training on software for digital forensics. You can kind of say that's where it really started to take off, because the world started getting more interconnected, the internet started coming around more. It was a booming time. AOL was essentially how you would get online if you knew how to get online. 56K was all the rage for public sector. Public. I meant personal life. That's what I was referring to, not public. IRS created search warranted programs. Yeah, that was all in the 90s. ASR data created expert witnesses from Macintosh. Oh, that's a new one. I didn't know much about that one. iLook is currently maintained by the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Yeah, they went pretty digital early on because they kind of had to adapt at the times. It's the IRS, man. Everyone wants their money. Don't worry about that. Access Data Forensics Toolkit, FTK, is a popular commercial product. Yes, you guys should have played with that this week. If not, I'll make something for it. Don't worry. But FTK is pretty popular. I've used FTK a couple times just to mess with it. So, we'll get there. Understanding case law. As these laws can't keep up with the rate of technological change. This is true, and I'll give you guys an example of a law in California. I looked down because it's just a really dumb law. Did you know there's a law in California that you can't shoot a whale from a moving vehicle with a harpoon? And I don't mean boat. Moving vehicle as in a car. Look it up. I kid you not. That law's still in the books. They made it over probably 100 years ago now, since whaling isn't really a big thing in California. But they didn't know what to do with someone shooting a whale from a car, so they kind of said, you can't do that. And it's still there. So, ipso facto, I dropped little tidbits like this that are kind of weird. When statutes don't exist, case law is used. Allows legal counsel to apply previous similar cases to current ones in an effort to address ambiguity in laws. So let's say you digitally saw a digital whale or movie car. No, I'm kidding. Essentially, what they're saying is, if a law for what happened doesn't exist, let's reference something similar and go based off that. That's how that operates. So examiners must be familiar with recent court rulings on search and seizure in the electronic environment. You stay up to date by this by reading it up on your own, or as part of your job, or whatever you do or whatever you do as part of your duties as a digital forensics investigator. Man, that is a mouthful. Anywho, so moving on. To supplement your knowledge, develop and maintain contact with computing, networking, investigative professionals. Yeah, that's just networking. You're going to go to conferences, if you do this. You're going to meet up with people that work in the field with you. If you work in this, government entity, they'll have meetings once a month, big meetings where you talk about, hey, here's what we saw. Hey, what did you see? Let's compare notes, that kind of thing. It's not oh, we'll meet once a year, figure it out. No, things change every day, right? We read about hacks every other day from people getting your personal information stolen or computers are locked out. Ransomware was big. Now ransomware is it's still big, but it's not as talked about anymore. Botnets are becoming more prevalent. If you don't know what a botnet is, it's just a collection of computers being used for nefarious reasons. There's a couple botnets that got shut down recently. Everyone was like in Spain, one was out in Eastern Europe. Look it up. It's pretty interesting stuff. That's the kind of things you would work on if you work in government. For private, you would work on that kind of stuff, but it's because it's outsourced from the government, so you're technically still working for the government. Other things are more like corporate espionage. I can't talk today. Like internal fraud. Technically, if they did something on the machine and got money or what have you, you would be working on stuff like that, examining the data. So, anyways, back to this here. Join computer user groups in both public and private. For example, Computer Technology Investigators Network (CTIN) meets to discuss problems digital forensics examiners encounter. Consult outside experts. Yep. That's how you know it's with comparing notes. So, as I mentioned earlier, we talk about both of these two, and here we go. They both fall into two categories, like I said, public sector investigations and private sector investigations. Private usually moves a little faster than public, believe it or not, because private operates a little differently in terms of, getting the warrants. Yeah, that's still part of it, but if you're hired by, let's say, Microsoft to conduct an audit on somebody, that's a little different versus, hey, I work for the North American, say I work for NASA, and I gotta investigate one of my employees or I investigate someone across town for they stole blueprints digitally or whatever. They'll work internal, but if you're gonna tap their home computer and check things or scan their hard drive because they had to bring it to work or what have you. You have to have a warrant, plausible cause, whole 9 yards, and it'll take a while to get approved by HR. It's complicated. Is the best way I can look at it. A lot of red tape you got to go through. So here we go. Government agencies, Article 8 in the Charter of Rights of Canada, U.S. Fourth Amendment, search and seizure. So essentially, Article 8 in the Charter of Rights of Canada is the same as the U.S. Fourth Amendment, which regarding search and seizure. Private organizations have company policy violations and litigation disputes. Differences, right? Apples to oranges. Public sector investigates involving government agencies responsible for criminal investigation and prosecution. ATF, CIA, DEA, think of it, they're all there. Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution restrict government search and seizure. They need a search warrant. Without it, they can't do it. Otherwise, it's illegal, and it breaks the Fourth Amendment. The Department of Justice, DOJ, updates information on computer search and seizure regularly. This is true. You can check it out on their webpage if you're curious. Inbox me, and I will send you the link. Private sector investigations focus more on policy violations. So who broke company rules? Doing what? How so? With what? Etc. Etc. So moving on. When conducting public sector investigations, you must understand laws on computer-related crimes, including standard legal processes. So, how do you gain access to the person's computer? What were they doing? What did they do that broke the law? Which laws did they break? Guidelines on search and seizure must be followed. How to build a criminal case. Criminology is very important. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act was passed in 1986. Specific state laws were generated later. So first, the federal government passed something, then local governments, state governments, came after it and developed laws related to it. California has some. I don't remember what they are. Excuse me. Off the top of my head, but I can look them up later and let you guys know if you're curious. Let me know. Just inbox me. We'll go from there. I guess my dinner is starting to make me sleepy. So, legal process. Let's go. A criminal investigation usually begins when someone finds evidence of a witness or witnesses a crime. Witness or victim make an allegation to the police. Police interview the complaint and writes a report about the crime. Report is processed and management decides to start an investigation or log the information in the police blotter. A blotter is just a giant tracker of crimes and previous crimes in a big database. That's true. So let's go to the next slide. Digital evidence first responder, DFR. Arrives at an incident scene, assesses the situation, and takes precautions to acquire and preserve evidence. So this person's the first person to show up. They will start tagging things, labeling things, and noticing things without having people move anything. A digital evidence specialist has the skills to analyze the data and determine whether another specialist should be called in to assist. You know, they will look at the items physically and determine if they need more hands to tag and bag and asset things. Affidavit, a sworn statement of support of the facts about or evidence of a crime, must include exhibits that support the legalization. So this is when you're more going to court, you're presenting, like, affidavit, then swore, yada, 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 yada. It's because you have proof and you go, here it is. That's what that means. So, moving on. Private sector, start with that for a bit. Investigations involve private companies and lawyers who just company policy violations and litigation disputes. Example, wrongful termination. So let's say someone is wrongfully terminated from a company and they say, well, no, I was within my right to be here, or I shouldn't have been fired. They can have them sift through company email, granted that they have permission to do it because of the Department of Investigation through labor board or what have you. Government entities get powers like that. They're local or statewide, and they can do that kind of stuff. And then they can find out why they were terminated, why it was legal, why it wasn't legal. Whole nine yards. Businesses try to minimize or eliminate litigation. They will try to shut it down as hard as they can, but sometimes they just can't go around it. Private sector crimes can involve email harassment, falsification of data, gender and age discrimination, embezzlement, sabotage, and industrial espionage. Those are all the kinds of things that private sector organizations really more like usually fall into. So those are listed there. Don't worry, that won't be on an exam. I won't do anything like that to you. Excuse me. Still, businesses can reduce the risk of litigation by publishing and maintaining policies that employees find easy to read and follow. When you're at work, are there rules normally have to follow? You follow the rules, you don't get in trouble. That's essentially what it means. Most important policies define rules for the use of the company's computer and network, known as acceptance use policies. So what that means is, when you're at work, do you treat it like your own computer? Certainly hope not, because that's how you get in trouble. Doing whatever you do, I'm not asking, judging, or whatever. Anyone does it, their computer's not my business. But what I'm saying is, don't treat it like your home computer. It's a piece of work property. Treat it like work property, and do only work-related things. Don't use Facebook. Don't use social media. Just avoid it. If that's the case, and you'll be fine. If they're against it, that's where that would come into play. Just saying. Line of authority. States who has legal right to initiate an investigation, who can take possession of evidence, and who can have access to evidence. Yeah, that's usually falls under the IT department normally, in terms of gathering stuff. If they have someone that handles that there or not, or a third party, and they'll give them the line of authority. That's what that just means. So businesses can avoid litigation by displaying a warning banner on the computer screens. Informs end users that the organization reserves the right to inspect computer systems and network traffic at will. So in other words, if you log in, here's one from the government, for example. You are about to access a United States government computer network that is intended for authorized use only. Authorized users only. You should have no expectations of privacy in your use of this network. Use of this network constitutes consent to monitoring, retrieval, or disclosure of any information stored within the network for any purpose, including criminal prosecution. So in other words, by clicking OK, you're agreeing, like, look at whatever you look at. You go your email, you look at what to eat, etc., etc. You give them all that A-OK when you're clicking OK. You agree to it. That's what that means. So here's what banners could say. We just talked about it. Use the system networks official business, systems network subject to monitoring anytime by the owner, blah, blah, blah. Use the system in place and set to monitoring by the owner. Like I said, you click OK, you're agreeing. Unauthorized or illegal use of this system or network will be subject to discipline or prosecution. There's legal ramifications of what you do if you don't stick within the guidelines, is what they're saying. That's all. So businesses are advised to specify an authorized requester who has the power to initiate investigations. Examples group's authority or corporate security investigations, corporate ethic office, yes. If you break ethics, that's also very important. Corporate equal employment opportunity office, yes. Internal auditing, yes. The general counsel or legal department, they have those kinds of powers. So during private investigations, you search for evidence to support allegations of violation of a company's rules One, attack on its assets. There are three types of situations that are common. Abuse or misuse of computer assets. So how many times have you heard of people getting fired for doing something stupid on computer work? That's what that means. Email abuse. They send, I don't know, they harass people through email. This is what I can really think off the top of my head. Doing inappropriate things on email. That too, that's considered email abuse. Internet abuse is kind of straightforward. Harassing people over the internet while you're at work would constitute that. Doing anything illegal on the internet while you're at work would constitute that. That's what that covers. Private sector investigators' jobs to minimize risk to the company. So if you get hired on, those are the kinds of things you will look at essentially and research and deal with on day to day. We're a private company though, not a sector job. The distinction between personal and company property can be difficult with cell phones. Yeah, that's kind of a great one. Smartphones, personal notebooks, and tablets. This applies more to cell phones now, I think, than anything. Maybe, I guess, let's say tablets, laptops. Yeah, the reason I say that because, so if you haven't noticed, I'm wearing a Santa Ana College polo. I work there. I work in IT. And because I work in IT, I have Outlook on my phone. Here's the problem with me having Outlook on my phone is that where that falls into. It kind of blurs the line between. Oh my god, my shirt just disappeared. I blended into my beautiful island background. It blurs the line between my personal and private device and a company item because stupid moth thing. Because I have Outlook installed and that allows me to access my work email. So, let's say my phone needs to get looked at by the government for X reason because of emails, they can confiscate my phone because I have Outlook on there. That's the kind of gray area that gets kind of hard to deal with. Same thing if it was on the tablet and Outlook. Simply, they can take it and look at it. I have nothing illegal to hide, but that's again, that's where the problem is. Is this where bring your own device environment, BYOD? Some companies state that if you connect your personal device to the business network, it falls into the same rules as company property. Yeah, that's what I'm pretty much referring to by having, work email, which you can't see in my damn phone right here with picture mode. That's where that falls into. It's like, oh, it's technically ours, even though it isn't. So let's talk about professional conduct. It includes ethics, morals, and standards of behavior. An investigator must exhibit the highest level of professional behavior at all times, maintain objectivity, maintain credibility, and maintain confidentiality. So whatever you work on in terms of recovering data, what are you seeing, you can't talk about it if you're working a case, regardless of if it's private or public. You just don't talk about stuff because it can involve very sensitive material. It can involve people's lives. It can involve people's finances, things like that. That's why you have to maintain credibility or maintain confidentiality when working on something. Just say, hey, we're at the office. That's it. Don't talk about what you work on. Don't talk about what you've seen. Maintain credibility. Yeah, you have to be honest. You cannot lie about the stuff when you, in terms, write it down or generate a report. Just be straightforward and say, does it meet the objective of did we get everything we need to get to prosecute this person, or do we find the person liable for what they did, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Investigators should also attend training to stay current with the latest techniques, changes in computer hardware and software networking. Yeah, that again, conferences that's therefore training happens once, twice, 3 times, 4 times a year. It just depends because technology, we know, changes from night to day usually now. Anywho, so next slide. The role of a digital forensics professional is to gather evidence to prove that a suspect committed a crime or violated a company policy. So that's pretty straightforward what your whole job is. If you were a digital forensics investigator, a DFI, we'll call it from now on. Collect evidence that can be offered in court or a corporate inquiry. So it's where you present your findings. Investigate the suspect's computer. We talked about that briefly, but yes, that's what you do. Preserve the evidence on a different computer. So you would have a lab set up. I'm in my garage. It's 10 by 10 garage. If this was it, I would have something called access control in this area, as in nobody could come in but me with just a badge or my boss. That's it. No one else should be back here. A regular network technician should not be back here. A regular computer technician should not be back here. They're not allowed to touch any of this stuff because what if we're working a case and they'll go, oh, I need that spare hard drive you have. It's like, well, there goes the case I worked on. You just took the hard drive, you wiped it. You can recover it, but if you put 10 hours of work into it and they just sunk it, it's only 10 hours lost. Things like that. So that goes under chain of custody, which is kind of what I was alluding to. Route the evidence takes from the time you find it until the case is closed or goes to the court. So you're kind of responsible for all that. You file it, catalog it, put it away. You have your own little storage area for it, bin 3, box 4 holds hard drive for whatever reason. And you would have a note on there or just write it down and, off to the races. So here we go. Computers can contain information that helps law enforcement determine chain of events leading to a crime, evidence that can lead to a conviction. So I'm not trying to get gory with any of these details or anything, but how many times have you heard of people that have murdered their, significant other, and they said, they Googled, or did a computer search on, you know, get morbid here, but probably think of something that could be a little PG here. Let me think of this off the top of my head. But whatever have you. They did searches for how to bury people or how to cremate people. There you go. It's about as PG as I'm going to get. Don't get any further than that. But they did this and discovered this by using forensics, digital forensics, by taking their computer and scanning it. And even if they delete it, it's still in there somewhere. I guarantee it. Right? Anything you do on the internet stays forever. Remember that. Law enforcement officers should follow proper procedures when acquiring digital evidence. Digital evidence can be easily altered by an over eager investigator. Yeah, you can jump the gun and you mistype something and it pulls up something similar to what you need to look for, but it looks right even though it's wrong, false positive, things like that. A potential challenge. Information on hard disks might be password protected, so forensic tools might be needed to be used in the investigation. Yeah, but I'll be honest with you, you can break a hard drive's encryption pretty easily now, and this stuff is about 2 years old. So I guess, yeah, I get what they're saying, but it just depends on how powerful your machine is too, and what kind of software you're running. I'm trying to figure out one that we can use where you can brute force at something legally, and not break anything. So I'll think of something for a lab. Don't worry, we'll do something fun with this. So moving on. Employees misusing resources can cost companies millions of dollars. Misuses include surfing the internet, that's what I was talking about, sending personal emails, using company computers for personal tasks like paying your bills, paying your mortgage, researching flights to Tahiti, things like that. That's what they mean by misuse. Steps for problem solving. Make an initial assessment about the type of case you are investigating. Determine a preliminary design or approach to the case. I'll cover that more in detail in a couple of chapters, don't worry. Create a detailed checklist. This is just an overview, guys, of what we're going to do, supposedly, or what you do as a DFI. Determine the resources you need. Obtain it and copy a evidence drive. So this is where I say you would take the person's computer, you would clone the hard drive essentially onto another drive, and then you would extract data all nilly-willy freebie without having to worry about damaging the original drive, which you would give back. Which at that point they can destroy, shred, do whatever you want. Doesn't matter. You have a copy, and that copy isn't going anywhere outside of that lab until the investigation's done. That's what we're referring to. So, steps for problem solving continued. Identify the risks. So, what are the potential risks that you could have with this person, or this case, or these items? Mitigate or minimize the risks. So, how much risk is tolerable? Again, I've stated that you cannot solve 100% risk, right? So, no matter what you do, some things might get by you, some things might break. If you copied it or cloned it, whatever you did, you're good. Test the design, test your theory, test what you're working on, see how far you get with it. Analyze and recover the digital evidence. So you have to analyze everything you get, right? It could be a cookie that leads you to somewhere on a different website, or it could be a small fraction of a thumbnail that's kept in cache or temporary files, things like that. Investigate the data you recover, you dig into it more. Where was this used? When was this accessed? Where did they go? What does it do? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Complete the case report and then critique the case. So like, what could I have done better? What worked? What didn't work? That's what that's referring to. All right, itchy. Moving on. Oops, too many slides. So you assess the case. Systematic outline the case details. What was the situation? What was the nature of the case? What are specifics of the case? What are the evidence you have? What was the known disk format? Was it FAT32, NEF, NFST, things like that? Location of the evidence. Where did you collect this? Where was it from? Was it from their home computer, work computer, personal phone, things like that? Based on all these details, you can determine the case requirements, etc. So, basic investigation plan should include the following activities. I said say activities. Sorry, sometimes these slides they make are weird. Acquire the evidence. That's something you're going to do regardless, no matter what. If you're investigating, you got to acquire evidence to figure out what's going on. Complete an evidence, form an established chain of custody. Yes, this is saying, hey, I cloned a hard drive on this date. It belongs to me. It's stored in the lab. It's stored here. It's on the bench. It's wherever. The bench is where you work on things. Transport the evidence to a computer forensics lab. Again, this is your lab I was talking about. Secure the evidence in an approved secure container. Something with a combination lock only you and one other person would have access to. That's it. You want anyone tampering with your stuff. Basic investing plan continued. Prepare for your forensic workstation. That's what I call the bench, workbench, workstation. Your tower, your work tower that I use for this kind of stuff. That's what you would prepare. What software does it need? What kind of connections does it need? How long is it going to run? That technically really hard because you can run it all day and all night. Yeah, things like that. Retrieve the evidence from the secure container. So get it out before you start it. Make a forensic copy, clone it, copy it, however you want to do it. Return the evidence to the secure container, so put the original item back, and now you have your clone. Process the copied evidence with the computer forensic tools. Whatever you're using, whatever I had you install, you can kind of use that. For example, API is one of them, FTK is one of them, things like that. That's where you would use them. Now you have a copy, go nilly willy. Go bananas. All right, guys, let me go grab a cup of water. This will be only a second to you guys, but it will be more for me. So I'll pause my recording. All right, guys, back from where I left off. Evidence custody form helps you document what has been done with the original evidence and its forensic copies. Also call it chain of evidence form. This is the thing I was talking about before. There's a picture of it on the next page. The two types. Single evidence form lists each piece of evidence on a separate page. Multi-evidence form. So yeah, that's essentially how forms look. See, here's what you would fill out. It's not the greatest picture. I'm sorry. That sucks. That's a single one. Here's multi. Oh, sorry, it's a cop one. High-tech investigation unit. And that is really hard to read. That's a single evidence form as well. Go back a page. Oh, this is multi. My mistake. Thought this was single. The multi one looks like a single page. The single one looks like a multi-page. I don't know. I didn't get these. So. But there you can see ID and description of evidence. Vendor name, I think is what's in there. Mall number, etc. You would just fill all that out. So I need to secure your stuff. I'm gonna do about 10 more slides, guys, and cut the recording there. So that'll be part one. So use evidence bags to secure and catalog the evidence. You see it on every cop show, they go through forensics, pens, and pick stuff up and put it in bags, tag it. Use computer-safe products when collecting computing evidence. Yeah, that's kind of standard. You would use anti-static bags, anti-static pads. If you bought computer equipment before, like video cards, they come in pinkish-looking plastic. This is just an envelope, but it's essentially kind of what it would look like, but it's anti-static on it. Use well-padded containers. Yeah, it's fragile, right? Technology is pretty fragile. I have a flash drive here I'm holding, and I guarantee you if I bend it enough, it would snap in two, and that's the reason we use well-padded containers. It's just sitting on my desk. Use evidence tape to seal all opening. Oh, yeah, you would wrap it essentially. Stay evidence tape. Don't touch it. CD bays, insertion slots, power supplies, and of course, yeah. I don't know how much evidence you're getting off a USB cable, but sure, you could cover it with evidence tape so no one tampers with it. I mean, sure, why not? I understand the whole point of CD drives. That's true, but CD drives aren't really that common anymore, technically, because they're kind of phasing out. Anyways, moving on. You could check firmware on stuff. I'll talk about that later. So write your initials on tape to prove that the evidence has not been tampered with. Yeah, you would just essentially extra layer of security. Consider computer-specific temperatures and humidity ranges. Yeah, make sure you have a safe environment for transporting and storing it until a secure evidence container is available. So yeah, you have storage for your storage area that's just only accessible by you, and it'd probably be within the lab, to be honest, because it has to be temperature controlled to maintain that 0 humidity because you don't want to damage anything. So let's go on. As an investigator, you develop formal procedures and informal checklists. Yeah, to cover all issues important to high-tech investigations, ensure that correct techniques are used in the investigation. Yeah, you kind of would, make your own checklist of, oh, do I have this or do I have that? Is this one checked off? Do we pick that up? Do we get that? Things like that. But you'd kind of do this as you go on the job. It's just not something you do from day one in the sense of you got to make it up as you go until you get really comfortable and familiar with it. That's how that works. The majority of investigation work for termination cases involves employee abuse of corporate assets. Yeah, that's still very true. Incidents that create a hostile work environment are the predominant types of cases investigated. Viewing pornography in the workplace. That's essentially when you should not be doing something you're doing. Sending inappropriate emails. Again, that's where you guys would come in to cover items. In terms of viewing pornography, you would essentially have to trace back and look at what they looked and present what they looked and state that's why they're getting fired. If they challenge it, that's why It'll be in a log. It'll tell you what website actually you can get a log of it from what computer, but I'm not going there. Organizations must have appropriate policies in place. Yeah, they're usually covered in the employee handbooks or wherever you work. And no, I have not had to deal with that. So, well, to conduct an investigation, you need organizations, internet proxy server logs, literally what I just mentioned on network logs, suspect computer's IP address, suspect computer's disk drive, you will have all that easy. Preferred computer forensic analyst tool. I think FTK can do it. API can do it. From what I recall, there's a couple other ones I need to remember that I haven't used in a long time. They might be able to do it. I will get back to you guys on that one when I remember what they are. It's been quite some time. So moving on. Recommend steps. Use standard forensic analysis techniques and procedures, which you will learn in this course along the way. I will try to cover as much as I can, guys. It's 6 weeks. We're doing the best we can with what we got, right? I don't want to overload you guys. I know you guys have a lot to do. Semester's coming up. It's almost May, right? We have till the 26th of May to finish. Use appropriate tools to extract all web page URL information. Contact the network firewall administrator, request proxy server logs. That's the network logs I'm referring to. Compare the data recovered from forensic analysis to proxy server logs. You're essentially going to go, user says it's accessed at 2 p.m. This is where he went. Network log, 2 p.m. Here's the IP from this computer. Here's the IP from a log. A match. Here's the user who accessed it. They're the same user. Ta-da! They did something they weren't supposed to do. That's kind of what it means. Compare data recovered from forensic analysis to proxy server log. Comparing them. Do you analyze the computer's disk drive data? You could actually do what's called a RAM dump and scan the RAM and see what was the last things he accessed. It's similar to that, but just more in depth. Then is like usually conduct an email abuse investigation one. To conduct an investigation, you'll need an electronic copy of the offending email that contains message header data. You're scanning the header. If available, email server log records, depending where they're hosting the email. It could be on site is what it's called, where your company hosts it, because it's literally on site. Ours is not anymore. It's migrated to the cloud now. Microsoft handles it. Enable systems that store user messages on the central server that is on site. Access to the server. Just talk to your server admin. He'll give you logs. Access to the computer so you can perform a forensic analysis on it. You will have the computer, I guarantee it. Your preferred computer forensic analyst tool, whatever tool you want to use to scan it and make sure this is where it came from. Use the standard forensic analysis technique, which we will cover more later down the line. Obtain an electronic copy of the suspect's and victim's email folder or data. For web-based email investigations, use tools such as FTK, internet keyword search option to extract all related email address information. Yeah, you can essentially sift through the mailbox. Is what you're doing with it. Examine header data of all messages of interest to the investigation. So a header is what gets sent when you send an email. It's in the header. Literally, have you ever heard that phrase? You hit reply, and the header shows above it. What's in it and where it's from, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's how you would do it. Did I skip one? Sorry, guys. Yeah, that's where I was. Sorry about that. There's another case we can look at too. Attorney-client privilege investigations. Things are getting weirder, but this is something I haven't dealt with. Under attorney-client privilege, ACP rules for an attorney, you must keep all findings confidential. This is what I mentioned about confidentiality. You don't talk about this with your wife, kids, brother, uncle, cousin, sister, husband, or whoever. Doesn't matter. Many attorneys like to have printouts of data you have recovered. You need to persuade and educate many attorneys on how digital evidence can be viewed electronically. You can also encounter problems if you find data in the form of binary files. Step for conducting an ACP case. Request a memorandum from the attorney directing you to start the investigation. So, hey, what do you need me to do? Give me a memorandum so it's written word. Request a list of keywords of interest in the investigation. Whatever they want you to search for is something you'll look for. Initiate the investigation analysis. For disk drive examinations, make 2 bitstream images using different tools for each image. So what it means is you're making 2 images of the same drive for analysis. That's all that means. Compare hash. We'll get to hashing later. On all files of the original and recreated disks. So you essentially compare the data to make sure it matches with hashes. Hashes are a form of encryption, technically. And hashes pretty old now, I think about it. But anyways, continuing the ACP case here. Methodically examine every portion of the disk drive and extract all data. He'll do that with the images. Run keyword searches on allocated, unallocated disk space. Yeah. Because if it's deleted, it becomes allocated, right? That's how you would scan it, unallocated. For Windows OSs, use specialized tools to analyze and extract data from the registry. You're going fishing. That's what that means. That's an old term when you fish the registry and look for things. With binary data files such as CAD drawings, locate the correct software product. You would search by a CAD file extension. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to have you do that. For an unallocated data recovery, use a tool that removes or replicates non-printable data. Yeah, you would scan that sector and then recover the data. And then reappropriate it and spit it back out. That's what that means. Steps for conducting an ACP case continued. Consolidate our recovery data from the evidence bitstream image into folders and subfolders. So yeah, you would essentially reorganize this somewhere on your work machine and say this is for case whatever. Here's what I found in this area. Here's what I found in that area. Here's what I found in this area. It would all be there. Other guidelines: minimize ready communication with the attorney. Yeah, you don't inform them of every step you do, just when you're done with what you need to do. That makes any sense. Any documentation written to the attorney must contain a header saying that it's privileged legal communication confidential work product. This way the attorney doesn't go blabbing to whomever that, hey, we found this from this case. That could throw you in a loop. This is the attorney and paralegal analyzing the data. So you can review it with them. Oh, industrial espionage. There's a bunch of these. All right, guys. I'm going to take a break here. Then I will continue these cases in a bit. So I will see you in the next one.